With the take-up rate for TraceTogether at only 50%, could phase 3 still happen before the end of the year? We get an expert's view. Investigators found that excessive condensation caused the collapse of the ventilation duct in the next cinema. A babysitter sentenced to 7 years in jail for poisoning 2 baby girls who were under her care. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quaid. Now subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. 13 new COVID-19 cases were confirmed today. All were imported and placed on stay-home notices or isolated on arrival in Singapore. The Health Ministry will share more details tonight. Well, meanwhile, there are still instances of people and businesses breaking COVID-19 rules. Well, after this scene outside Foot Locker at Orchard Gateway last week, the retailer has been ordered to shut for 10 days until December the 14th. During the suspension, it's not allowed to conduct physical retail activities, but may continue to carry them out online. But the Singapore Tourism Board and Enterprise Singapore said investigations are still ongoing and further enforcement action may be taken. Well, meanwhile, Gemma Steakhouse at the National Gallery Singapore was ordered to suspend operations for 20 days for holding a dinner for 75 guests on October 31st. Although the diners were seated at tables of up to 5 people, CCTV camera footage showed that they intermingled on multiple occasions and failed to wear masks even when they were not eating or drinking. Well, safe management compliance is one of the key conditions to enter phase 3, but experts are pointing to another major stumbling block, the inadequate adoption of TraceTogether, be it the token or the app. And so they say it's not likely that phase 3 will happen by the end of the year. Well, joining me to discuss this is Associate Professor Alex Cook, Vice Dean of Research at the Saw Swee Hock School of Public Health. So, Professor, as you know, a 70% TraceTogether take-up rate is one of the conditions for us to enter phase 3. The current take-up rate is only 50.8% right now. Are you able to project then when we'll be able to reach the 70% target and thus possibly phase 3?
If we go back in time to around June, the take-up rate was around about a third. So that means that over the last 6 months, we've only really been able to increase uptake by about 15%. So naively extrapolating that forward suggests that it would take about another 6 months, or middle of next year, before we finally hit the 70% participation rate. I think that's a little bit pessimistic, however. There's 2 reasons why I think that the next month may see a much faster uptake of TraceTogether, though. So one is that the tokens were delayed a little bit in how they were delivered to the population, and that should be improved over the next month, I think. And the second is that many venues will start to require TraceTogether to be installed on the phone or to have the token if you want to go into the mall or the restaurant, for example. So that will give people a strong motivation for having TraceTogether, and I'm hopeful that we'll get up to 70% soon.
Well, it's not just about TraceTogether that is a key requirement for us to enter phase 3. It's about, of course, safe management compliance. But we're seeing cases of, safe management breaches, like what happened at a Foot Locker and Gemma Steakhouse. So when it comes to meting out penalties in these 2 cases, should the individuals be punished as well for this to, to be just much more effective overall?
Yes, I think it depends on the exact conditions of the case. In some cases, it could be the individuals who were queuing up, for example, to enter a store, were abiding by the rules as it seemed to them, and it was therefore just that the store had an issue. I think the other possibility is that you could have, for example, in a restaurant where people are mingling between tables, and then in that case, the blame is somewhat shared between both the restaurant as well as the customers of the restaurant. I think in that case, penalties to both sets may be necessary in order to ensure compliance.
Right. Can we go back to the take-up rate of TraceTogether? I guess we all know it's kind of a slow progress. So does that indicate anything about people's readiness when it comes to getting vaccinated when the time comes?
No, I think they're quite different. So the hesitancy around about TraceTogether has been quite technical things like the fear that it will drain the batteries, they'll slow down the phone, or the fear of being under surveillance from the government. Whereas I think that the likely barriers to vaccination are likely going to be more things like fear of getting a jab, or worries about potential side effects. And so I think that the fraction of people who are worried about vaccination may be quite a bit less than those who are worried about TraceTogether.
So on the topic of vaccinations, perhaps it's wise to revisit this again, but how much of Singapore's population needs to be vaccinated in order to achieve herd immunity, Professor?
So this depends a lot on what the effectiveness of the vaccines are that finally reach our market. The trials which have had results out over the last month have been really very promising, showing a vaccine efficacy of around about 90%. Now, vaccine efficacy is not the same as the actual effect when it's rolled out en masse in the population. Not everyone will end up being compliant to taking multiple doses, for example. And so it may be that the vaccine effectiveness is less than 90%. But if it is still 90%, I would suggest that actually to get herd immunity, we only need perhaps 60% of the population to be vaccinated. That's a really optimistic target, and I'm hopeful that we can achieve that over the next year.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time today, Professor. I've been speaking to Associate Professor Alex Cook, Vice Dean of Research at the Salisbury Hawk School of Public Health at NUS. In other local news, water accumulation was the culprit behind the collapse of a cinema ventilation duct back in August. If you recall, the incident, which happened in Next Mall's Shore Theatres, left 2 moviegoers injured. And a probe by the Building and Construction Authority showed that a significant amount of water had accumulated in the insulation material surrounding the duct. This was a result of excessive condensation over a sustained period. The weight overloaded the brackets supporting the duct, causing it to give way. Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat said today that continued investment and global collaboration are ways in which Singapore can contribute to global recovery amid the coronavirus pandemic. Noting Singapore's efforts to keep its tech ecosystem vibrant, he said that our commitment to innovation and working together is key to driving economic recovery and growth. DPM Heng was speaking at the opening of the Singapore FinTech Festival and the Singapore Week of Innovation and Technology. Now, the 5-day event, largely held online, boasts a star-studded lineup of speakers, including Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, Google CEO Sundar Pichai, and New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Well, meanwhile, a director of a local accounting firm linked to disgraced German payments company Wirecard has been slapped with 3 further fraud charges. R. Shanmugaratnam of Citadel Corporate Services was charged with 3 counts of falsifying letters from Citadel. The letters erroneously represented that the Singapore accounting firm held certain amounts of cash in escrow accounts. Shanmugaratnam is the first person to be indicted in Singapore over the collapse of Wirecard. A babysitter who poisoned 2 babies under her care was sentenced today to 7 years in jail. 39-year-old Sadia Jamari was convicted of 2 counts of administering poisons to the little girls with an assortment of medicines. Some of these medicines are used to treat insomnia and anxiety disorders. She committed the offences in November and December 2016. The children, who are unrelated, were 5 months and 11 months old at the time. When you're picking out fruits or vegetables at the supermarket, do you find yourself choosing only the ones that look the best? Well, I'm guilty of doing this, but so-called ugly fruits or vegetables doesn't mean they're any less fresh or edible. Well, the Sunday Times is partnering with DBS Bank on a 6-part series on food waste. And in this 3rd installment, we follow a group that is finding more use for these so-called ugly food.
These are edible. They are not rotten. Yes, some of them have blemishes, but some of them are in good condition. My name is Derek Ong. I'm one of the founders of Food Rescue at Sengkang. I've been doing this on an active basis since May last year. When we go down to Pasir Panjang Wholesale Centre, we have 2 groups of volunteers. One group will go to the fruits section, the other group will go to the vegetable section. And we comb these 2 sections simultaneously. We will go around asking them for fruits that they want to discard. These are fruits that they have blemishes, but are otherwise edible. We distribute to the community here. Okay, we have satellite points. We call it satellite plaza. Okay, in Sengkang area, in Toa Payoh, okay, in Hougang. We distribute to soup kitchens as well, to elderly homes. Okay, so we have a few avenues to distribute all this, to make sure that all these so-called rejected fruits and vegetables are being consumed.
This is the link to the Live More, Waste Less series on the Straits Times website, where you can read more. Hey, tell me if this sounds like you or someone you know. You're in your 30s to 50s, inching towards retirement, but not quite there yet. You think you're pretty young and have quite a way to go in your working life, and so you don't really think about saving for retirement. Well, in financial planning circles, such people are called Peter Pans, who can stay young forever. And this syndrome has made many people assume that they don't need to plan for retirement until they're much older. So here's your reality check. A recent OCBC survey found that 75% of Singaporeans not only don't sufficiently plan for retirement, 37% of them actually live by the day and don't even think about saving for old age. Well, let's hear more from the Sunday Times' Invest editor, Tan Wee-Boon. Wee-Boon, what are some of the reasons why people, not just Peter Pans, end up not having enough for retirement?
There are three reasons why people end up short, in my view. Most people don't know how much they actually spend each month. And spending here means everything, including your insurance premium, taxes, and bills, not just groceries and food expenses. So if you do not even check how much you spend every month now, how are you going to know how much you will need after when you stop working? Second point is being too complacent. As they are still working and are able to pay for all expenses month to month, they think that they will have enough. Not surprisingly, almost 80% of Singaporeans underestimated how much money they would need at retirement. Many people don't realize that even when they are still working now, they need to save enough for another 20 to 30 years when they are not. Finally, many people think it is okay to start later. Sometimes people say, how can I save for retirement when I don't even have enough now? Well, if you think you don't earn enough, it's time to work out a budget to see how you can cut down on some expenses that are not essential. After all, $1 saved today is $1 more tomorrow. Remember, if you spend most of your money now when you're still working, how are you going to live when you stop working and have no income?
Yeah, of course. Well, Wee-Boon, I'm in my 30s. How do I start planning for retirement right now?
When you are in your 30s, there are many competing needs. You need to buy a home, start a family, for instance. So retirement naturally takes a back seat. That's perfectly fine and normal, actually. But you can do both with prudent planning. I would recommend two basic things that you must do. First, consider whole life insurance policies to cover you and your family. The good thing about having such policies is that by the time you retire, chances are the value of the policies would exceed the total amount of premium that you paid. So it means that you end up getting free coverage and probably some savings for retirement. Then you must keep an eye on your CPF. If you are employed, then you're fine. If you're self-employed, make sure you contribute part of your income to CPF every month. Singaporeans don't realize that they are actually very lucky to have this very powerful scheme that can provide them with lifelong income from 65 onwards. Up to 2,200 every month, 2,200 every month for life. The good news is that every working adult in Singapore can actually stand a chance to achieve this if they are diligent to start planning early.
Right. Well, Wee-Boon, I am saving. I have a savings account, one that I dip into occasionally. Do you recommend that I set up another account specifically for retirement? If so, how much of my monthly salary should I put into that account to ensure that I'll have at least enough to get by when I retire?
Well, there's no hard and fast rule when it comes to managing your own money. As I mentioned earlier, all of us actually have a good retirement account that's being created in CPF. So make sure you save a lot of money in there. As for your normal monthly savings, I think it is good habit to start a monthly saving account with your bank so that you can start automatically credit anything from a few $100s to a few $1,000s every month into this account. If you make this a habit, by the end of the year, you will have saved a decent sum. With this cash, you can choose to do a few things. 1, put in fixed deposits for retirement or as an emergency fund. 2, you can invest the money in a fund for the long term. Or even 3, spend on something for the family, such as changing your car to a new one without the need for a loan. Remember this, life is a journey. You need to reward yourself too, and not just think about saving and investing all the time. If you are disciplined and spend within your means, you can actually enjoy yourself today and yet still have enough for your retirement later.
Well, thanks very much, Wee Boon. Talking to you is always a good wake-up call for us. That was Tan Wee Boon, Invest Editor at the Straits Times. A link to his story on this topic is in the description below, but you have to be a subscriber for straitstimes.com. In the global headlines, the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines has arrived in Indonesia, comprising 1.2 million doses developed by China's Sinovac Biotech. Another 1.8 million doses will arrive in January. Indonesia is now drafting the rules governing their distribution, which will be completed within 2 weeks. It's not clear when the vaccination program will start, but officials have said that next month is the earliest the country can roll it out. 23 miners are confirmed dead after a coal mine accident in Chongqing, China. A carbon monoxide leak occurred last Friday evening at the Diaoshuitong mine, leaving only one survivor. The mine had already closed 2 months ago, and the workers were dismantling underground mining equipment. Mining accidents are common in China, where the industry has a poor safety record and regulations are often weakly enforced. Well, Malaysia has no intention to reintroduce its GST at the moment. Responding to a question in Parliament about whether the tax would be reintroduced to increase the country's revenues amid the current economic climate, Deputy Finance Minister Tun Muhammad Shah Abdullah said the ministry is focusing on taking care of the people's health and ensuring economic recovery and resilience. He added that the government is looking at improving governance and has set up a multi-agency task force to better manage its finances. Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.